Welcome. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Rutland Town School Board on November 14th at 6:01 p.m. If everyone could stand so we can say the...
Can you make sure? Angie, can you hear us? Angie, you're muted.
I can hear you, not very good, but I can hear.
Is that better?
That's a little bit better.
Okay. I'll try to speak up. We're going to stand now and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to start with an approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jeff. And now we're on to teacher, staff, and community comments. Anyone here want to speak up? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Old business, we'll start with an elevator update and grant from VSBIT. Would that be you?
I'll jump in there.
Awesome.
So we do have an elevator update. We didn't get any bids so far, but I did reach out to Giancola and Naylor and Breen, and Giancola came up with a couple things, and I checked in with our fire marshal. Because it's over 100 feet, before we did the elevator, there has to be a second exit. So that kind of changes thing a little. It's 104 feet to the exit. So there has to be, once that's operable, there has to be a second means of egress, according to the fire marshal. So that was an oversight that wasn't theirs. It'll have to be a step back. But we don't, what was recommended by Giancola was to get some spec drawings, which we do not have. So that might be something where we start to continue to do that, so we can hand out some specs to potential contractors.
I've spoken to a couple different elevator companies just because we're doing something at my job, and Otis Elevator, they have a whole engineering team, and also Alpha out of Montpelier. When I talked to the girl at Alpha, just kind of threw it by her, and she said she hasn't heard of any bids or specs.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that was advertised or whatever, but they're right in Montpelier, and they're not out of state.
Yeah, I have the list there that you had forwarded to me as well.
Okay, all right.
So do they need the specs before they can bid?
Well, they said that would be the fairest way to bid, because you're bidding on the exact same thing.
So where's the process with that? Is that?
It would be to get either the elevator company or architect to make some specs.
Otis and Alpha both have engineers
Their own,
that can
yeah.
come.
Yeah, Stanley, I think, is another one that's out of Albany. That's the same. And stuff
Yeah,
like that.
I'm thinking in state, that's all.
Yeah.
So someone told you that a second exit has to be put into place before an elevator is constructed or before it's operational?
We would not be able to use the elevator until there was a second means of egress there.
Well, we already knew that, right? Because we can't use that space, right?
Yeah, we couldn't even use the elevator.
But we could put it in.
The second exit will have to come when we do the second floor.
Right. So I would entertain a motion to at least try to do the specs, right?
Yep.
Anybody interested?
I'll make a motion to get the specs done by whichever companies would be willing to come and do them.
Well, we could ask a couple. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Molly. Any discussion? All in favor?
Right?
Right.
Thank you. And then the grant from VSBIT, would that be just what we have in our notes?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when I attended the superintendents and board chair, or the but I guess it's the association's conference last month. And I listened to the VSBIT presentation. They had mentioned that they offer grants for safety reasons. And I'm really happy that Louis and Chris looked into that, because that the cost of putting in the fire safety upstairs is going to be at least partially covered, which is great. So thank you very much.
Yeah, and traditionally what we do is apply as an SU. And this year, Louis and I spoke with Tina that there's a need here, so we're going to divert all those funds to Rutland Town this year to help offset that cost. It won't cover the entire cost, but it'll,
A good part of it.
right.
Yep.
Thank you.
So then, once we hear back about the grant is when we'll proceed, is that what we're
Correct. We'll
doing?
begin working with that with Kelly and with Louis.
Okay, great. So it'll be nice to have that, to know that that's in place. Great, thank you. Next up, pre-K, we have an update.
You know, Tina, just real quick, on my computer, it's not showing that the microphone is registering at all. And I think we're relying on that mic up here. I don't know if these are even plugged in.
Oh,
Yeah, they are.
I think I just see the cord just sitting over there. I'm sorry. It's because I'm more worried about Shauna at home and she's taking minutes. I just want to make sure that she gets. Is that plugged in? All right, because it's not showing on here, so we may have to adjust.
The light's not, is there a light on?
No, you'd have to adjust actually with that screen there, but when Sarah gets back, I don't mess with that because she'll use that. We
I
just
see
have
there's
to,
a light on that one, that's all.
no, but you'll have to change settings because you've. I'm sorry, I don't mean to just
oh, that's okay.
distract you, but if you look at the three blue dots, you
Not
see that it's
these?
not registering right now that we're talking.
Oh.
If we were speaking,
Oh, I see what you're
Oh,
saying.
They'd
they'd be
be
pulsating,
moving.
yeah.
so we'd have to adjust that. So you'd have to go to. If you want to try doing it right now, if you go to the
I can't hear right now.
right, okay, all right. So if we go to the three dots next to the next to the red
I can't hear
hang up.
anything at all right now.
Okay, yeah. Actually, here. I'll go ahead. So the three.
Yeah, it's weird because she did hear me before.
Yeah, I think there's a mic up top that's. Andrew, can you hear us? No,
Oh, it's,
is that working, Andrew? All right, so we're just getting the.
I think, I don't know if she went off because it was moving, those three.
Andrew, can you hear us? Still not working?
No.
No.
It's trial and error. Sorry, I'm not trying to hijack. Sure.
It's okay. I'd much rather people can hear us.
We had tested it earlier and everything was working.
Yeah. It was on the default one before, I thought.
Kelly, can you just tap the mic?
It's the other one, right? Is this one? Or is it
It's
this
this
one?
one.
Oh, it's that
That's
one.
right,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
When you,
None of them are registered right now, so.
yeah. Are they all plugged into the same thing?
Yeah, they all are continuous.
Hmm.
So they start and just work one to the other.
Yeah, they're going back over that, so I don't know why we hold mic. But if Andrew can't hear us, that's a problem.
Does that work?
No.
One of them was moving. I don't know
Yeah, so.
if she couldn't hear us. Oh, that one. Oh, it's him doing something over there, maybe.
Kelly, what did you just do?
He unplugged it and plugged it back in.
Something was moving over there, but.
Yeah.
So what I could do is I could just open up the mic on my laptop and then we'll. Angie, can you hear me? We're gonna have feedback.
I can hear you with an echo now.
Ay, ay, ay. There's probably some other answers.
There is, but if I use mine, we'll have that problem the whole night, so.
It's very strange.
Yes.
I'm probably super loud on this one because I moved it really close.
This one's the one that hooked up.
Oh, that one's not hooked up.
I wonder if this is a. Should that go somewhere?
That would just be, yeah, I think so. I don't know what happened with the setup.
Yeah, maybe something loosened up.
Do you want to maybe take a 5-minute recess while we figure this off? And
Yeah.
okay, just so.
We'll take a 5-minute recess until we figure out our audio issue right now and come back at about 6:18.
You want to put that in like the Google chat or something if they can't hear us? Okay.
Angie, we're gonna take a 5 minutes recess. I'll chat it.
Thank you. I don't have, not on my screen right now.
5.
To order,
Okay, well, let me start the recording real quick.
as soon as it's recorded, and I'll repeat that.
Okay.
We're going to call the meeting back to order. Thank you for your flexibility with that timing. But it also allowed our principal to come back, so we're ready for our pre-K update. So, Angie, I think you have some comments for us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. For those of you I have not met yet, I'm Angela Hayes, and I'm the Early Childhood Coordinator for DRCSU. And I'm here tonight to answer the questions that were presented at last board meeting in regard to the Rutland Town Preschool waitlist. So I have a brief PowerPoint to answer these questions, and I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So just bear with me and start my PowerPoint. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. Rutland Town Preschool. So to answer all of the questions from last month's meeting, I reached out to all of the families on the Rutland Town waitlist and was able to connect with 19 out of the 26 families. So this question, I believe, was answered at last month's meeting. I just wanted to confirm that how many students are on the Rutland Town pre-K waitlist is in fact 26 students. Another question that was presented at last month's meeting was, are students on our waitlist attending other preschools? And the answer is yes. All 19 are attending a preschool program in our area. Next, how many of these students are attending full day or half day programs? So 12 of our students on the waitlist are attending full-time programs and 7 are attending part-time programs. How many Rutland Town parents have asked for half-day pre-K? At the last board meeting, Sarah had stated that one family has reached out to her And I haven't had any families reach out to me yet in regard to part-time pre-K programming. What preschool programs are our students attending that are on the wait list? So we have 11 different preschools in our area that the children on our wait list are attending. So on the next slide is a spreadsheet that will show the specifics. I'm just going to enlarge this. All right. So this spreadsheet shows many of the preschool programs that are in our area, and it shows all of the preschool programs that our students are attending from the wait list. So the preschool programs here highlighted in yellow are full-time programs, and then below the programs highlighted in gray are our part-time programs. So under, well, it's getting a little fuzzy, but that's okay. If you guys can hear me, I'm going to keep talking. Under the number of students attending from the wait list, these numbers here represent the amount of students that are attending each preschool program. And down here, highlighted in purple, is the total amount of the students attending full-time programs on our wait list. So there's 12 full-time students attending full-time programs on our wait list. And then down here shows that there are 7 students on our wait list that are attending part-time programs. And the last column over here, all the way to the right, under number of students attending that are not on our wait list. So there's 4 students that are not on our wait list that are attending full-time programs. And then down here, it shows that there's 2 students that are not on our wait list that are attending part-time programs. Do children on the wait list have access to preschool at Rutland Town Preschool? Out of the 19 families that I was able to get in touch with, they all have access to a preschool program in our local area. The other 7 families I was unable to get in touch with, and I'll update Sarah and Chris with this information as I receive it. And I just wanted to share that I think Rutland Town is so fortunate because in many areas, there is a nationwide issue with not having access to preschool programs. And Rutland Town is fortunate that in our area, there are many enrollment opportunities that Rutland Town families can access, both part-time and full-time, to accommodate their needs. I found through the phone calls that I made that 15 out of the 19 families that I was able to get in touch with prefer full-time programming over part-time programming. I also want to share that it was so nice to reach out to these Rutland Town families and make contact with them. I was able to hear their stories and so to hear their stories and to also know that these families have access to a local preschool or daycare in our area, and that many of them did in fact need full-time programming. And I think that, well, I know that last month Sean and Sabrin emphasized that we're meeting the needs, we're also meeting the needs of our current families enrolled, as the majority of them reported that they also need full-time programming. And I think this was done through a family survey. I'm not sure if Sabrin and Sean are here tonight, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was done through a family survey. And lastly, about that, let's get it a little bit bigger. Lastly, I just wanted to share, excuse me, the UPK yearly tuition. It can be readjusted each year, but for this year, the 2022-23 school year tuition for UPK is $3,656 per student. And we have approximately 25 students attending UPK program from Rutland Town. This includes both students on the wait list and off the wait list right now. And I provided this information if you want to see what Rutland Town pays yearly total for UPK tuition, and you can compare this with other things such as program expansion costs, which I can't provide you. I don't have that information. So that ends the slideshow, and I'm open for questions. Let me just stop presenting.
I have a question. Would it be feasible for us, for Rutland Town, to keep our fourth graders into this, bring them into the school and send out our third graders?
3-year-olds.
Huh?
You're 4-year-old and 3-year-olds, correct? Not fourth graders, third graders?
I'm not fourth grader.
What about fourth grade?
I had the 4 and 3, right?
My daughter's fourth grade.
Anyways,
My
yes.
daughter's in fourth grade.
Would it be feasible, do you think it would be feasible for Rutland Town to bring in the 4-year-olds and the 3-year-olds we tuition out?
I personally don't think that that would be necessary. I think it's important for our 3-year-olds to also have access to preschool programming. It's important. The younger they, research shows the younger they get to school, the better student outcomes are. And right now we really don't have, we're not seeing what the AOE defines as a demand. So we really don't have that demand where we have to say, let's take 4-year-olds or 3-year-olds. The AOE defines demand as when our public school district school exceeds their limit. And then there are also no other programs in the area that our families have access to programming. And so right now, our families do have many enrollment opportunities in the local area, so we're not seeing that demand. I don't know if that answered your question, but
Not really. What I'm looking for is, you said there's families that we have on a wait list, we have families that are going to other places. Are they 4-year-olds, 3-year-olds going to those other places? Should we only bring in the 4-year-olds and have the 3-year-olds go to other programs that are certified preschool?
go ahead, Sarah.
So currently, right now, we just have 4-year-olds, and those that are 3 are on IEPs. So due to the wait list. So we take the oldest first. So those that are on the wait list, it goes by age. So those that are 4 and sometimes 5, because they may have a.
So we have 3-year-olds here, just,
But they may be, they're on an IEP.
can they not get that at the other schools?
Not
They,
usually.
they would then, they would need special education services. So we say if they need specialized instruction from a special educator,
Okay,
they
all right.
automatically come to preschool, and then it's by 4-year-olds. And
Okay.
I think in talking with Angela and Lisa Madison last week, they had shared that there were a few families that, due to work obligations, they may need earlier childcare, earlier in the morning than school starts, or later in the day, that they've, or the parent that works in Middlebury, for example, they rather, what works best for them is to not attend preschool here. And for the universal preschool law, they're able to attend all of these identified area preschools. So those were a few families that said, we'd love to send our kid to Rutland Town, but it doesn't work with our work schedule. You know, I work in Virgins and I drop off in Middlebury. I need after-school care. But currently, right now, we serve 4 and 5-year-olds, and those that are 3 are on IEPs.
So Angela, thank you so much for sharing that information. I wasn't able to magnify your presentation on our screen, so it was really hard for us at the back table here to see all the tiny numbers. So I was wondering if you could send that to maybe Chris or Sarah to send out to the board members.
Yep, they both have the link.
Thank you. And then I did have a question. You said 25 students are attending pre-K programs outside of our school right now. Is that correct? And,
Yes, that's correct.
And each one of those, our school district is paying that $3,656?
Yes,
Okay. And some of those students are by choice, And some of those students are because we didn't have room for them.
Yes,
And of the 26 families on the wait list, you were able to talk to 19 of them, and all
Yes.
19 had found programs somewhere else.
yes. And we're satisfied with their program.
So there's 6 others that weren't on the list that you mentioned.
Yes.
Okay.
Seven others.
Seven.
Yep. And once I get in contact with them, I'm going to reach out to them again this week. If I get in contact with them, I'll update our information.
Sorry, I meant there are 6 others that weren't on our wait list that are also in separate programs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. Thank you very much for all this information. Does anyone
You're
else have any
welcome.
other questions for
Thank
Ann?
you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to skip out. Thanks for
Yeah,
having
no
me. and
problem.
Reach out to me if you have any other questions, and I'll be happy to help and support where needed.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So, any discussion about all the information that Angie gave us tonight? I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that these students that are on the wait list have access. I think we just have to keep in mind,
I mean, I think it's,
The amount of
I think
money.
it's important information to have, so if action needed to be taken at any particular point, or at least our you know, or our thoughts on the process, but nothing leads me to demand action, you know, from what I just heard, at least.
Yeah, same for me too. I don't think that we need to make any changes right now, but like Tim said, it's good to have this
I mean,
information.
yeah, it's great to have the information. I'd rather have too much information than not have a piece that, you know, so.
And as far as the per pupil spending, it's cheaper to send them out or have them go out, right?
right now, I think that what we need to just look at is, are the students that are in the outside programs getting the same skills and education
Well, that's.
as those that are here? And I think that that's not necessarily something that we can answer tonight. Just something to maybe just look at in the future and see what Sean and Sabrin, you know, kind of see when they get them, the 3-year-olds as 4-year-olds, or the kindergarten teachers get. But I'm really happy that we have a lot of programs in the area that students can access, and I feel a lot more comfortable just saying, I think we can wait too.
Mhm.
So, great, thank you. All right, next up, recess. Just kind of following up on, we've had a lot of parents come in at the beginning of meetings and just voice their concerns. Just wanted an update from admin about how things are going and where things are now.
Sure, thank you.
Mhm.
So we have had a few parents that have approached myself and Mr. Gross asking about recess towards our especially towards middle school. We do have a board policy, and our educational school quality standards state that we need at least 30 minutes of physical activity either before or after school. So
Or
we're very
throughout the day, right?
throughout the day, pardon me. Yep, throughout the day. So we do have our 2 minutes in between classes, which is about 15 minutes of just movement in between classes. We have encouraged, Mr. Gross and I have met with teachers to encourage them when they're done with lunch, don't rush them through lunch, but when they are done, that's a time for middle school to bring them outside. We do offer sometimes an extra day it's on a Spanish and PE rotation, so they may sometimes have 3 days of PE instead of the 2. And we do offer for 7th and 8th grade sometimes 6 middle school sports. You know, I was blessed. I took my birthday to spend the day as an 8th grader last year, and it was a wonderful experience. I think without my workout in the morning, I hit 11,000 steps. I was exhausted. So for me, as much as I hear from parents saying, we want recess, we want that, 30 minutes, students are getting that plus some. And having some vocal parents, I will like to add that there have been quite a few that have contacted me and said, enough with the outside time, it's back to the books, we got to get these kids in the classroom. So it's really finding that balance that, those brain breaks are important. I would love some more families to come visit classrooms to see what it's like in the middle school. I was in a 6th grade classroom where students were up front in the board. small mini lesson, then they went back to work in groups, then they went back to find a spot for reading. So just that movement. Our middle school math teacher, when they're doing labs in science, she's taking her kids out if it's an extended block to get some outside. Sometimes just opening that door and saying, let's get outside for a couple of minutes and come back. These are things that we want to teach our kids to do as adults. You know, we don't want to be sitting. I think, you know, our schedule allows for that movement. And we're blessed to have an athletic program and other after-school programs for our kids. So I appreciate the feedback from families, but I feel that we do more than what is required for movement. And again, we have a lot to get through, and it was just interesting. Last year, parents were complaining that it was too much, you know, recess, free time, and this year I'm hearing from both sides, for sure. But I'm very confident in the movement breaks that our students currently have.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm very satisfied with that presentation from Sarah. I think they're getting enough activity, moving around.
Okay. Next up is the flooring estimate discussion.
Okay. So I did an estimate for what it would cost in our suspected areas of asbestos and stuff like that. I believe that was sent to everybody, and the blue markings that you see are the suspected sites, and the yellow would be the sites that have that additional carpeting, and if we were going to do it, could possibly be tested as well, just because if we were going to remove it, you got to test it. And prices have gone up. I did an estimation for marmoleum, which averages out about $7 a square foot. Carpet averages out about $3 a square foot. And the removal of that, called mid-state asbestos removal, and they gave me an estimate that it would cost anywhere from $6 to $10, depending on what it was for the 9-inch tile that we have. So that's how the estimations are. The other costs that you see on there are that's really where price would go up if you did it one room at a time, because each time you had ATC, which is Atlas Technical Consulting, they have been here and have done our asbestos books, all of that. It would be a one-time sampling fee of like $2,795. But then every time they come in, they would do a work plan for the abatement team, and that's about $2,000. So that's each time, each room you do. And then the PCM and the TM, which are phase contrast microscopy and transmission electron, they do those two tests to test the air. It's $850 for one and $1,250 for the other for each time they do it. So if you do one whole abatement, you would do one test. You would only get hit by that one thing. But if you did it in multiple, you get charged each time they come in to do it. So that's really where your savings are of doing it as a bulk. So.
And I just wanted to make it clear that we don't have an asbestos problem right now.
No, it's
just
contained.
Once we start renovating the floors is when it will be potentially an issue, so we have to fix it.
Correct.
So it's not a rush to do, but at the same time, we do need to replace the carpets in a timely manner.
Yeah.
So we have to try to figure out the best way to do it. And Lewis gave us 3 options for it, which was on one of his sheets.
It's in the board budget update.
Yeah. So it was the last paragraph of that. And the first option was doing one room at a time, but it resulted in a higher cost because of that testing that
Yep.
Kelly was just mentioning, that we had to spend that many times for each room. We could also do all 23 rooms at once for next year and put it into the budget and lease the cost. But that lease would add about $40,000 to the budget. And then the third option would be delaying the project a few years and building that $40,000 into the budget slowly, so that we would have the money to start the project later, and it wouldn't increase the budget too much this year. And I believe that Lewis put that into our budget draft
Correct.
for tonight with option number 3, because that's what he recommended. We can always change it if we decide that that's what we want to do. But there's a lot of advantages to increasing that line right now, because if something else happened, we would already have a little bit of ready to go for repairs. It wouldn't be as catastrophic to our budget later. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually was looking at this earlier today, and I would like an option 4, which would be delaying the project until we clear a bond and then bond it and do the whole thing. I've done a whole flooring thing before, and it's a lot of work, but take one summer down the road and redo. I mean, the carpets, other than being color faded, are in great shape. It's just, so it's not a rush thing to do. But like Kelly was saying, you want to do this at once.
Well, I think that that's what option 3 is. It's doing it all at once in a few years.
But I don't want to look at trying to raise the budget, so it's like when we decide to do it, maybe we incorporate it with the second floor and do it all in one bond issue. But we got to free up some bond money, so I don't know where we are with those, or
Well,
where we are with paying some of those off. But then that's a 4th option to me.
Okay.
Anyways, keep in mind the taxpayers.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, I like 3. I don't know enough on the bond piece to speak to that. I mean, that's worth a discussion. I think it seems like that's how some of these other high ticket items have been delivered. But I can't really speak to that personally. But and is there in the budget? Is there the lease cost broken out in any way? Or is
It's the 10,000 was put into I believe the repair line, and what his idea was, if you put it in 10,000 now, it doesn't hurt as much, and then once you have, 3 or 4 years down the line, I think he said 3 years, you'd have enough to start the project with a good lease where you won't have to be increasing the budget at all, because that lease payment will be built in already.
Yeah, I just meant like interest. Is there an interest rate on the lease or something?
There will be, but he's what Lewis had said, I believe, and Chris, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that 10,000 that he's putting in now will,
Absorb all.
will kind of absorb it all. So it won't ever feel like this huge hit. Like if we had decided to do it this upcoming summer, then we would have a $40,000 hit to the budget. But if we increase it a little bit, it is helpful in that it won't be quite as much of a shock when we do it, and we can still do it all at once and save all that money.
Yeah, I'm for trusting Lewis in number 3. That seems like a good move.
What's the lifespan on these carpets, or does it
I think
vary?
it's switching it to marmoleum. The carpets some of them they get food stains on them, especially in kindergarten. It's hard to clean them.
We've done a good job at cleaning them, but eventually they are going to wear, like Jeff said, they're color faded.
I just meant
there's
the new project. I mean, I think 7 years to pay off. How long do they last, or does the material
And again-
last to where you're not paying for X period?
It depends
You're
on how
paying
well
for
you
7
take care of
years,
it.
but you're actually getting a value over the course of 15. Or
You're
whatever.
Well,
replacing it with marmoleum. So how
So
long is
unless
that?
it's not the hallways, because you don't want that sound,
Yeah.
not in the hallways. Or if it's an office space or something like that, the rest of it, yes, it would be a marmoleum where
Which has longer wear.
it's greener, it has a longer lifespan, it's
Which
just
is
better.
also almost zero maintenance, sweeping and
Right.
mopping. There's no stripping and waxing, and
Yep.
that's where all this needs to culminate to, is that right there. Because that just saves so much materials and labor and everything. But a 4th, again, I'll throw another option out there. If there's money at the end of the year, we'll do it. That last year there was how much? 320, 340 left over?
But that 320 is helping to offset our next year's budget too.
Right, but I'm
Yeah.
just saying, if there has to be something somewhere where you could do a big chunk of it even, then you do it. You know? Taxpayers give us the money to run the school for the year, and if the money's there, do the project.
So we can revisit that
Yeah,
in June, but I think we should plan on one of the other options right now.
I don't know.
Because I think we need to figure out how to deal with it with the budget. And we have to approve the budget before we know how much is left in June.
Well,
So Tina, would you like to just, we can keep that 10,000 in the budget right now, and then in December, I can talk to Louis about coming back and talking about option number 3, as well as potential bond, what that may look like, and we can
Sure.
discuss at that time.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
I think it's good, Jeff, I appreciate your question about bonds and where we're at, and I have it in my office somewhere, because I did ask Louis that. We had a security grant, we also had a bond, I believe, for our solar panels, so he had all those numbers right at his fingertips, but I think that's a good question to ask, where are we at? What does that look like?
I think he was recommending not doing that because we have a bond out right now with the elevator, and we also want to do a bond for the upstairs. And the purpose of doing the bond for the elevator separately from the rest of the upstairs was to kind of make it a little bit more digestible. If we have too many bonds out there, it gets to be
well, that's
hard.
why, I mean, that's
Yeah.
before we make any decision,
Yeah.
I know, I mean, we can go with the 10,000, which I would agree to, but we need to look at some more of this, so like Chris
Yeah, I
said, just,
think Louis, in December, we can have, just show you what bonds we currently have, what, the total money is out there right now, and.
I mean,
just-
the addition, that may be coming close to, I don't know where we are with that.
Right.
Next up, we had brought up last meeting about the Friends of Music and the PTO accounts. And we found out that they do have their own separate accounts, not affiliated with the school. That it's kind of treated like a booster club. So booster clubs are usually separate organizations from the school, and it's not usually a problem. However, because they are raising money in the school's name, if the board had wanted to have more say in how they raise money or of their accounts, that could be something the board could ask for. Is that kind of where we were, I think?
Well, the PTO, the Friends of Music, is, you're correct, and operate as a booster club and could operate independently. I think where the issue could potentially be is if they were doing conjoined events. And so, let's say there was a Rutland Town art show being put on by our staff or students, but then the PTO was hosting that, or was then going to collect all proceeds from that. And I think that's just where the concern has been in the past. I know that other schools have separate booster events, and so it's very clear that it's booster staff. They may use, so I'll just say like a Proctor, that every year during homecoming, the sports boosters host a bonfire and a dance, but that's put on by the boosters, and so they just use the space, but they handle staffing, they handle chaperones, they pay all that, and so therefore all that money goes back into the boosters, and so that's a good agreement. Then when Proctor had, like, say, a musical, then that money just came back to school because that was school produced. So, but there's that understanding in terms of what is booster, what is school, and I think just, so I think it's really up to the board in terms of just either delineating that this is, Friends of Music, and then this is the PTO, and then this is a school-sponsored event, and then keeping that separate, So I know sometimes and I have worked in a school where the school and the boosters tried to work together, and it was very messy, because, and sometimes it actually makes it more difficult in terms of, equipment and things along those lines. So it is kind of nice to have an independent organization at times, but if you have a good working relationship, they can kind of work together to accomplish goals, which is having the kids benefit from both organizations. So.
personal, I mean, I would go on the recommendation that, Chris or Sarah would have on that. My only question, is there, like, in regards to something like that, like, is there any liability that needs to be addressed in terms of, like, say a booster was hosting at the school? Do they have to sign anything? Like,
No,
is there
so
insurance-wise
they just
or-
would have to fill out a facility use form just like anyone else would
Okay.
use, right? And we'd waive, you'd waive the fee, things
Yeah.
along those lines, but yeah,
So,
they'd be, so.
that's all.
I would just ask Sarah, like, what's your opinion? Like, what do you like? Is it working well together? Like,
Yeah, I
we
mean,
need-
the PTO is really trying to get more more teachers and more parents involved. And so PTO members have reached out to me and said, we would like, for example, host a book fair. These are the dates. We put it in our newsletter. We they fill out the facilities use form. We waive the fee, and any fundraising, it should go through me. So I approve. So just over the weekend, the PTO, I'm pumped. They want to bring back grocery bingo, one of my favorites. So there's 3 events. Harvest Dance, the Sweetheart Dance, not the Harvest Dance, pardon me. The
Crafts and cookies.
Crafts and Cookies with Santa, and then the Supermarket Bingo. Thank you. And so they said these are the dates, and then I just work with Pam in the office and with Kelly so people know, and then we publicize it to advertise it as needed. And Friends of Music, I haven't heard that much from, other than I know they're doing some coffee and popcorn sale. Again, I think we're just trying after COVID to get more parents involved in some of these booster programs that we're much more involved in prior to COVID. So wonderful working relationship. I try to stay separate because I'm really not supposed to be involved in fundraising. I love to participate and help. But as long as the money is separate and I'm not responsible for it, I love the involvement and the support from both organizations.
Can we ask, are you still doing PTO, or you know anything about it?
Yeah, I guess so. I know some things
What-
about it. Sure. How can I help?
Well, that don't matter. What's your thought on this? I mean,
I think that, obviously the PTO works separately from the school. We're our own kind of organization, but we do kind of work like under the umbrella of the school, right? Like a lot of the events that we host are here at the school. Like Sarah said, we always have to fill out like a facilities request. I've worked with Kelly. He's probably so annoyed with me, but I work with him all the time when we have to organize things so we can have the space or anything that we might need. I think it works really well. And all of the fundraising efforts that we do get turned back around into the school in one way or another, whether it be, providing books for classrooms or furniture that teachers might request in their room. So I think it works really well. I haven't, knock on wood, I haven't encountered any issues with it yet. So I think it's going fine.
thank you. That was my,
I just want to put a credit limit on 10-year-olds at the book fair.
I was like, wait a minute, you've been in here like 4 times. It's only Tuesday. Like, what are you doing, man?
You're
I don't hear any motions to change anything, so I'll just keep going. Tapestry update and after-school programming.
Okay. And we do have Marie Gilman, who's
Yeah.
attending here tonight, who's the head of Tapestry.
So you don't roll up to me. So yes, I don't know if you have specific questions, but I can provide an overall update that, we're still trying to recruit. In particular, we need someone to lead the site, and I do believe once we get that person in place, other people will come on board. We started to see that when we thought we had a hire, and then she got snatched by someone else. We actually had a candidate that we were going to interview this morning who emailed us yesterday and said, sorry, I took another job. We have put the postings and continue to refresh them and put them anywhere we can think of, including in church news bulletins 2 weeks ago. So trying to get the word out. I had a conversation at the meeting I came here from with someone at Castleton with a slightly different angle that we haven't tried yet, but we have 4 or 5 different things we're working with them, with CCV. You know, in terms of hiring, unfortunately, that is a theme. Chris was mentioning it earlier. I hear it in directors' meetings on the state level. There are programs that have closed permanently because they can't hire. We don't want to do that. We want to have a program here. And if you're going to have an after-school program by state law, it is required that it be a licensed program, which we've been doing, we're equipped to do. We just need to hire some folks to work. Our other programs are struggling. We've probably had 12 to 15 applicants since the beginning of the school year. We've hired 8 to 10 of them in a variety of positions, and we've lost 7 or 8 since the beginning of the school year of staff that we started with. You know, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back every time we turn around. And when we came into the school year, we had, out of 8 sites that we run, Tapestry and Epic, we had 4 site coordinator openings. That's unheard of. We've never had to face that in the history of our programs, which is 20 years. But we did. Unfortunately, right now, this is the one that is still not filled. But we are trying. We really are. Any other thoughts, questions?
What do you see as the greatest challenge to hiring right now?
There isn't anybody out there that wants to work or, you know, work in this type of a job. It's not pay. When we look at pay, benefits, there are other programs that are offering more pay. Yes, sometimes we're pretty up there. Sometimes it's benefits. People have left a full-time position or their position has been cut and they need a full-time job with benefits, but not always. There doesn't seem to be a silver bullet, quite frankly. Talking with other programs that are 21st century funded at a retreat a couple of months ago, there are plenty of programs that have well-paying full-time jobs with benefits, and they don't have anybody. One literally just opened 2 weeks ago with skeleton crew. We just opened Proctor today on a wing and a prayer. We have 2.5 staff to serve 20 plus kids, and we're going to do the best we can safely and responsibly, but we wanted to get open, and we're hoping that that will help incentivize folks to apply too if they see the real thing is happening. I never found myself in this position before of not having people to hire, so, but everybody's facing it, any service industry in particular, but schools, businesses, you see the retail shops offering. And you know, I'll admit, I see within young people that I talk to, including my own, they're a little more picky about what they're willing to do and how many hours they're willing to work. And that's a culture shift that we have not been prepared for. And I say the we is global we, not just our programs. So it'll be very interesting to see how things unfold in the next few years. But I just wanted to assure you this program is very valuable. I mean, I share with Sarah any little tidbit of information I have. We're open to suggestion about other places to, you know, promote our positions. We're on School Spring. Those get sucked up into Indeed. We post on the state websites. We post on the state colleges' websites, directly to Castleton, directly to CCV. The instructors and professors are promoting the positions. They're good for internships. You know, we're doing everything we can possibly think of. But every suggestion that comes along that we haven't tried, we do.
So there's one at Proctor right now, and there's one at West Rutland.
Yes, West Rutland is only operating 3 days a week because of staffing. Proctor will see if they can swing 5 days a week. They're trying to do that with the site coordinator, a group leader, and an assistant. So it's all hands on deck. There is no extra time, which is fine, but it doesn't afford much flexibility. If somebody's out sick, like we've seen in the past, last year, program will likely have to close for the day. But what we hear is we want something rather than nothing, so we're giving it a go. But that was today, November 14th, they finally opened for the year. West Rutland has staff, none of them are able to work 5 days, so they've patched together what they can to be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. In the city, we have Northeast and Northwest combined at Northwest because of staffing. And we have wait lists at Northeast, Northwest, and Rutland Intermediate School right now because we don't have enough staff. I could literally hire 35 people tomorrow. And I've been saying that for months. We got lucky over the summer, and we were able to serve several families from here at other sites, but even with our good fortune of staffing, we did not serve nearly as many kids as we should. And it's discouraging.
Well, thank you for trying and coming tonight and giving us an update as to what's going on.
Yeah. It's more than that, you know,
Yeah.
but
Thank you.
thank you for having me.
All right. Next up, buses for sports. Just wanted an
Sure.
update.
Yeah. We have struggled to get buses for sports this fall, mainly due to lack of bus drivers. So similarly, trying to find people. So a lot of the drivers that we did have were current bus drivers, so they had to do their bus run first. So if there was a game right after school, it was difficult and we couldn't get busing. The kids will be the first to complain. I've heard it. The school board approved the busing. How come we don't have it for athletics? They were very appreciative of having that transportation. So in speaking with Mike Rowe, he's been assured by Betcha that I think they're on board, and Jeff, you may answer, there's 3 or 4 more drivers.
Yeah, we got different, more drivers.
Yep, so there's more drivers now, which is great. And one of our coaches, pending approval this evening, is also a licensed bus driver, so that will help tremendously. So he can coach and then drive the bus. So Mike has filled out the request for busing and has been told by Betcha that with these new drivers, we should have transportation to most of our games. And you know, Eric, myself, Pam, and Sherry sit in the office. We rotate for the bus radio, and I hear many times from the other area schools within GRCSU, where's our bus? Where's our bus? Kids are going to miss the game. And it's, you know, Betcha's saying I can send a bus once this driver's done their route. And I've been talking with other principals and even my own kids. It's a problem. It's just staffing. It's staffing. And as Marie said, I feel, and you know, they'll say, well, you think schools are tough to staff, you should see hospitality. And if you think hospitality is tough to staff, you know, there's no bus drivers. It's everywhere. So I've been told it should be better.
I would say that anything outside, that's tough for drivers to get there, but like basketball, if they could knock that back a half hour, the game's a half hour later, then you would have
Correct.
probably drivers being able to get there instead of trying to rush. When it's inside, I don't understand why they have to rush to get there when they could just knock the schedule back a half hour and be able to get the drivers, free up drivers to get where they got to go.
Yeah, and a lot of that.
So it's scheduling on the athletic part
Correct.
as well.
It's the AD, the athletic directors, and it's who the high school games have to be at this time, and usually high school varsity players get that first pick depending on which site they're at. So, yeah, we discussed
You might
that.
want to look at that anyways.
Yeah.
It might free up more drivers.
thank you. Next, financial reports. If you, since Lewis is not here tonight, if you have any questions, you can email him.
You won't be responding, but
Yeah, until December-ish.
yeah, when he gets back.
Yeah.
Just with a selfie.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the director's orders?
Make a motion
Oh.
to,
Sorry, I skipped something.
oh, I see it too.
The budget. Backtrack to that. So we have Lewis's update on the elevator, update on the equipment line and the flooring project that we just mentioned, as well as his VSBIT grant information, which we already covered. The budget, draft 2, he listed the changes that were there since the draft 1. And did anyone have any questions on those for Chris, or since he kind of went over it with Lewis before he left?
Hmm.
I wanted just to mention that Chris, Lewis, and I sat down and kind of went through this, and I was really impressed with how there were quite a bit of increases that popped up. For instance, the health insurance, we found out that instead of being a 10% increase, it's a 12.7% increase, and that there was an increase in tuition, there's an increase in pre-K tuition because we have so many families that are accessing other programs. Plus he added the $10,000 to the repairs budget line, and they did a really good job of going through and trying to not increase the final page number, which is the 4.7% in expenses increase. It was about the same last time, even with all those increases that we found out. So I was pretty happy with, even though it is, quite an increase, when we consider that the contracts for the teachers and staff went up, and that wasn't in our budget for last year or this year, and the health insurance increase, I thought, and inflation, that was actually, not as bad as it could have been. And I really think that Lewis and Chris, and with admin's help, Sarah, went through and really tried to think about where we could cut, and they did, to try to keep that number as low as they could. So I was pretty happy with that.
I just want to add that I want to thank Sarah. I know that there was a last minute ask that Lewis and I made of her to look at some additional cuts to be made, and so she went through and found this with the least impact on students, which was great. So the additional cuts that she found, or would not directly impact students or staff, and so just want to thank her for that. So just quickly pivoting and doing that. So.
And I did touch base with Kelly and Sherry as well. Yep. Before that was a challenging exercise to do in a tight amount of time, but mission accomplished. And again, we wanted to make the least impact on our kids.
So Tina, I know we talked about this. I think what Lewis and I would need is, if the board is satisfied with this, or if there's a number that they're looking for, then we can bring that back and we can work towards getting to that number. And we've done this with other boards where they give us a certain percent to work towards, and then we come back with options. So if the board say we want to get, say, to 2%, and say you decide you're feeling a little draconian tonight and you want to really cut it slim, we would show you what 2% would look like. We'd have 2 or 3 different options of getting our budget down to 2%. Like what would be on the cutting room floor, and then the board for a discussion. But if the board's satisfied with this, then we can move forward. So that's the direction I think Lewis and I need at this point. It's just what the next steps would be.
And also, just to keep in mind that for every 1% we cut, that it's $100,000 from the budget. So,
I'd like to see a 3% option.
I'd like to see a 3.7.
Is that just a 1% cut? Is that what you're looking at? Hmm. Well, I'm not asking for any less than that, so I'll just go on whatever you guys can propose on those. So
Yeah, we will,
it's pretty lean.
whatever the board asks, we'll go through, we'll do it, and we'll come back and show you this is what it looks like, and then for discussion. So, we just need a number, so I know, so.
I like 3.
I think knowing how much it took to, with all the increases that we know are here because of staffing costs, because of inflation and health insurance costs, I think 3% would be nice, but I'm not sure super realistic. I think it might be helpful to, by next month, maybe do closer to a 1% lower and to see what that looks like. And if it, knowing what that information is, I think we know if we need to go lower or not. I think that 3.7% would be worth, I'd even be okay with 3.5 and just seeing what that looked like. I think 3 is a little low with all the increases that we know we have.
Thank you.
So I think we have to come up with a consensus.
Right at 3.5 then.
I know just in my discussions with other superintendents, I know that they're, and this is not to include just more for information, that for reasons Tina said, with inflation, all these additional costs, health insurance, that boards are struggling to really get below 4.5 or 5%. So that's, where they're at. So we, wherever this board says, if that's, get down to 3.5, we can show you what that'll look like. But, our concern is, what impact it will have on student learning.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, those are the last things we touch, but there will be impacts. There'll be hard decisions that the board will have to consider as we start to look at, $100,000 or $170,000 from the budget, what that might look like. There's a lot. So.
Like I was saying before, I'm pretty happy with the 4.7, but sometimes it's nice, a good exercise to see what cutting it that much amount would be.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have.
That's why I don't mind doing it.
Yeah.
But it's just for you to understand that how deep the cuts are, and this is the impact, and this is what.
Yeah.
And I think it's also good for the public to see that we are exploring that, but also what that'll be.
So, I heard you say that a 3.5 would be acceptable for you. Is that too low for you just to see what that would look like, or?
No.
Okay, so let's do a 3.5 and then, but keep this one kind of side by side so we can kind of see where we cut and what that looks like.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. All right, now moving on to the director's order. Sorry about that, I jumped the gun before.
Make a motion to approve the director's orders.
Thank you, Billy. All in favor?
Aye.
And next up are the minutes. Thank you very much.
Tina, do you want Kelly to stay? I just.
For the
do
building
more-
matters.
Building matters, do you have questions for Kelly? I'm just wondering if, he did a basketball clinic tonight and he's still here.
Oh.
See ya.
No, I don't think there's anything that we can't email you about later.
No.
I can stay for the principal's report.
Okay, okay, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Anyone have
Just
any
thought you were nodding off.
comments from the minutes from October 12th. I have on top of page 3, the PSF is actually PFS. And there's a 0 after PTO. And then the bottom of page 6, should be changed to do. And on page 7, I think, and I wanted to confirm with Lynette, but I'm pretty sure that we were missing the part where Lynette asked if people could still attend if they missed the first strategic plan meeting, and Chris had said yes.
Yes.
And I didn't see that in the notes.
Oh.
So I just wanted to make sure that was added to the notes so that if people are still interested in the February 6th strategic plan meeting, would they still be able to come then or not?
Yes, I'll talk about it when I do my
Okay.
superintendent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna tell someone no.
So, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
And superintendent's report.
Okay, thanks. I'll be brief because I don't want to keep Kelly here long. But so there are a few things. I know the VSBA, VSA annual conference. I think Tina's going to talk a little bit about that during her report. So it was a nice 2-day conference up at Lake Maury. The keynote speaker, Kay Douglas, I think did a great job. Talked about some timely information around the impact that we're seeing about, with the pandemic, the recession, the inflation, just all the things that boards are facing, as well as school administration. So it was a good 2 days working towards some things we can bring back here to Rutland Town as well as to our SU. So like I said, I won't take too much because I know Tina has some things she would like to talk about there as well. The only other information or piece of information in my report that I'll highlight publicly, the rest is just for information, is just around the strategic plan. We did hold our second meeting on November 7th. So at this second meeting, we basically just went through. And first, again, I just want to thank, and Sarah can list those publicly, but we did have a nice turnout from Rutland Town with staff, parents, and students. And I think it was great. I think Rutland Town was well represented. I just want to publicly commend these students. They were very professional. They accounted well for themselves, and I think a lot of people were very impressed with the behavior. Not that we expect anything less, but just the input and the thoughtful reflection feedback that they provided. I know that the Jessica Harding, who facilitates this, said that she would like them more of our meetings because they really had a lot to offer. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I know that like I said, Sarah can talk a little more about that principal report. If she wants to publicly recognize them. If you want to hold off, you can. So I know you probably had it already, so I don't want to steal your thunder there. But so the purpose of the meeting really was to do take a look at what's called our SWOT data, and SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and then threats around the SU. And so once we identified these some key areas, and this was collected from surveys, feedback from the design team, feedback from some individual conversations that building administrators have had, central office administrators have had with parents, with students. We collected all this, and we were able to identify our 5 priority areas. And the 5 priority areas are, and this is in alphabetical order, so it's not prioritized, but academic success, communication, community engagement, school climate and culture, and then school improvement. What I was particularly happy with or pleased with is I know that over the course of the summer, working with each one of our boards, through retreats and through other discussions, that I think each one of these priorities came up as a concern for the board in terms of moving forward about how we can continue, around the academic success, continue to engage communities and in our schools, improve communication. And then we also talk about that climate and culture. I think that was important, particularly coming off the pandemic, where people for a couple of years had been kind of shut out of schools, is how do we welcome individuals back in our schools and do a better job of really kind of, creating that climate or culture where everyone feels welcome, and as well as around, the students as the staff as well. So And then school improvements, that's kind of a standard as part of this. But these will be our 5 priority areas moving forward. The next step was our teams, and Tina and Sarah, you can add it, and Eric there. We really started to identify goals within each area. So we took a look at that. So around communication, what would be some potential goals for the writing team to consider? What would be some, what would be success criteria? So how do we know that in 3 years' time, 5 years' time, that we've achieved that goal or that we've met that goal? What would that look like? And so we began that discussion. We are going to be collecting all that data, and then next is the writing team, which is comprised of the building administrators and the SU, as well as the central office administrators, are going to take that, compile that to a draft where we'll have each priority area will have a set of goals, and then after a set of goals, we'll also have some actionable steps, as well as kind of a 5-year plan in terms of year 1 through year 5, what that criteria may look like. So communication, there'll be a goal for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5 at each one of those areas. So and that draft will be shared with the design team on February 3rd for feedback. And there is a potential for a 4th meeting after I've talked with Jessica Harding, because I know that there's a lot to cover, and we may get some great feedback. We're also looking at so if we get feedback, we want to go back and share it with the team one more time before it comes to the boards for approval. So. Like I said, as Tina alluded to earlier, at the February 3rd meeting, public is invited to attend, provide feedback, but we will discuss as to whether or not we will share the draft out or how we'll share the draft with community for feedback as well. But that's something we'll be discussing.
And I think it's February 6th, right?
Did I skip it? February, I'm sorry, I keep saying February 3rd. February 6th,
Okay.
I apologize.
I just want to make sure for the record it was.
February 6th, correct. Thank you.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of work to be done between now and February 6th. But like I said, I think, we will have, when this is all said and done, a strategic plan that reflects the goals and the aspirations of all of our communities. I know I was just meeting with, over at Windsor Central today for a instructional leadership program. And one of the things I talked with their superintendent about, who had just undergone this process a couple of years ago, is I think it's important to reiterate to communities that we are not trying to standardize or create a very vanilla school in this SU. I think it's important for us to take a look at, say, a portrait of graduate, and while that's an SU vision, but it's important for us to really see what does that look like at Rutland Town School? What does it look like in Middletown Springs, Proctor, and see that we have to take those differences into account. And we even as we develop a vision for instruction or vision for learning within each of our buildings, there will be some subtle differences really to reflect the nuances, the needs of our community. So it's not going to be, like I said, creating these vanilla schools. In fact, it's going to heighten, kind of elaborate the needs, the wants, and really reflect, our community's needs. So I think it will be a great thing. So, but I just want to stress that, because, like I said, I do get a lot of phone calls from concerned parents that, hey, we're trying to make all schools the same. That's not what we're trying to do at all. All right. So we're just trying to make sure every one of our kids has access to high quality education and the supports and resources to do that.
Thank you. Principal's report.
Sure. Tina, I did bring some behavior data. Did you want me to share that, or to when you talk about the quarterly goals?
We can wait and do that during the
Okay.
quarterly goals.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, so for principal's report, we celebrated Red Ribbon Week, about stomping out saying no to drugs and anti-bullying, the week of October 24th. We did that with Officer Angie and our guidance counselor, Kate Daly. The Rutland Town Fire Department, if anybody saw the picture in the paper, it was super cute. They visited our preschool to talk about fire safety. Our 3rd graders, with the help of Mr. Gross, Mr. Trey, and Mr. Kelly, Save the Earth Club. They were meeting during lunch bunches to talk about some littering that they've seen outside.
The green team.
The green team, I apologize. Yes, the green team. So they made some posters around school and then helped pick up some litter. Healthy Foods, I had mentioned this last time. This was through a grant. Hillary Lambert is working with a few schools within GRCSU and doing some food and nutrition. So she's working with grades pre-K 1, 2, and 3. So her first lesson was October 19th. PTO Book Fair was a success. Meredith Dendo, I had posted a few pictures on Facebook. She works with some therapy dogs. So she's training her new therapy dog, Fauci. So she's back in the building, which is great, again, to welcome these volunteers back into her school. Student Council, we hosted our first 7th and 8th grade dance of the year, and they raised $332 for Hurricane Ian. It was a wonderful, wonderful dance. Rutland Town School Band received first place for Best Costume Marching Band at the Halloween Parade, and I received so many emails from community members and even Rutland City Proctor that said that marching band was the best sounding band out of anybody in the parade. I mean, the number of compliments that I received, I just forwarded them to Mr. Audette, were just amazing. The Rutland Town School Threat Assessment Team, which consists of myself, Officer Angie, Kate Daly, our guidance counselor, and Liz Yaddo, our behavior specialist. We attended the Governor's School Safety Conference in Burlington on November 2nd. Chris was there as well. We had a great turnout for parent, teacher, and student-led conferences with 95% parent and teacher, with parent participation. Our 6th grade TA ambassadors, a handful of them, as Chris mentioned, participated in the GRCSU strategic planning meeting on November 7th. Sophie Hammond, Hunter Pugh, Ren Dayton, and Kristen Sweet were all there. Thank them for their time, and it's always better with kids. They have honest feedback, great suggestions, and I was very happy to see them there. The high school fair took place last week. I was in attendance for that. We had 13 area high schools present, a lot of student turnout, which was great. We're still looking for a paraeducator for Rutland Town, a GRCSU paraeducator. We're always looking for substitutes, including nurse substitutes. Any volunteers, please just give me a call. And as Marie had shared, she's actively looking to hire staff for our Tapestry program. I'm going to skip just down to upcoming dates, and I'll have Kelly, if it's okay with you, talk about some of the building updates. Is that all right? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so we did have Ryan's story presentation in the cafeteria this evening for parents. Thank you for some of you that attended, and we did have an assembly for 5th through 8th graders that was very well received today. We'll talk a little bit more about when we review some behavior data. Class picture makeups are Wednesday. Actually, they may be tomorrow.
Wednesday.
They are Wednesday? Okay, just checking. Thank you. And we have another 6th through 8th grade dance to benefit Washington, D.C. This Friday. It's a red carpet event, so we'll see a lot of kids dressed up. No school for Veterans Day, and then we have Thanksgiving break coming up. Any questions for me before Kelly gives us an update on building? Okay.
All right. So a couple things I do need to add on here. But the new partitions have been installed in the boys' bathroom. Have a lot of praise from the young men going in there. They love it.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, the new partitions are here for the girls' bathroom and the cafe as well. It takes a little bit to put those up, so we're going to do it over the holiday break. New hot water tank has been installed and up and going. All the preventive maintenance is done on all the HVAC with new filters and on checks of all of our equipment. I have 2 gym divider quotes that I've received from different companies, waiting for the third that has assured me that I should see it this week. They're all coming in about the same, which is good and acceptable, really. We have air quality testing that we volunteered for from Efficiency Vermont. If you look over, you're going to see one of the tests right there on the shelf. So we have 5 of those throughout the building. And they're supposed to give a report at least once a month, if not twice. And I'll forward those as soon as we get them. But as they started testing, they said the air looked great. So, the old front entrance was one of the cameras that we lost during the lightning strike. That is down by the cafeteria, the entrance down there. And that is up and running again. And we also got a new warming or proofing oven for the kitchen. That was part of what Lewis worked on for us. And that's, again, up and going. We did the biannual asbestos inspection. We're all good. And we finally have a new outside light out there.
Finally.
Exiting the out front, so hopefully all that works.
Blinking.
Yeah, the
It's
one.
flickering?
Yeah, it's the one out
Flickering.
front's flickering.
All right, then I'll give it a
The
call.
flagpole though is really good.
Okay.
What's that?
The flagpole one was good. It was bright and it was not flickering, but the one at the front of the school was flickering on the way in.
Nice.
And it's gotta go.
But I noticed it was
Oh.
on.
Well, I told
Much
him
down.
to get it up, so
Yeah,
at
thank
least it's
you.
up. Now we just gotta fix the flicker.
That's a start.
It's a start.
It's the one on the side also. I didn't notice.
What's that?
Was there one on the side that was out
The
too?
gym
The gym
entrance?
side.
Yep, that
Sorry.
one is in at CED. I just have to go pick it up.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
What CED, Kelly?
Twin State.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds great. So it's that white box. That's the air tester. And how many did you say there were?
There's 5.
5 of them. Great. All right. Now we're on to the executive committee and GRCSU meeting highlights and VSBA conference highlights.
Contract stuff, right?
Oh, after we do personnel. Sorry, I missed that again. Contract recommendations. We have several in our packets. Extracurricular stipends. We have Will Tyler for 7th grade boys basketball coach, 8th grade boys basketball coach Thomas Beldy, Carrie Shelton's the rock climbing coach, Lorraine Cornell and Marisa Keyfaber are spelling bee club co-advisors, and Kelly McGee as a theater coach. Do I have any motions?
I'll make a motion to accept the extracurricular contract recommendation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Jeff. And we have one resignation, Eric Gross, who's in attendance tonight. Thank you for your letter and your service.
Thank you. Rutland Town's been very good to me. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be here. So I want to say thank you, and it's time for me to move on.
As of June, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I'll make a recommendation to accept Eric's resignation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. And vacancies are in the packet for your information. I do believe that it should be updated that we do have a long-term sub for phys ed now.
Yeah, I had just whispered over here
Okay.
to Chris about that. So she is serving as a substitute. So I believe that's why it's not
Not in the stipend, or the
Correct.
contract recommendations.
correct. But Carrie what's that?
Nothing. Go.
Okay, Carrie Shelton is a coach and a parent here, and she shadowed a few days with Mr. Rowe. She had to go through the interview process and applied, and is filling in as a daily substitute for him until Mike gets better and returns. And she was working with Keith this morning as well, so we're very fortunate to have her here.
Great, so
Very
that's
much
no
so.
longer a vacancy, right?
I think we have to leave it open
So
due to
we're-
licensure,
Because it's not,
because she's not a licensed
Okay.
PE health teacher.
so that's why
So
it's
that's
still
why
here.
the position stays open. Chris has said we gotta keep it
Correct. So
posted.
we're
but-
still actually looking for a licensed,
So she's subbing and not a long-term sub.
subbing while we're
While we're looking.
for a
Right,
substitute.
right.
Got it. Thank you. It's very confusing how this all works sometimes.
It is a little bit confusing, yeah, it's, she'll be with us for under 30 days, but we'll leave the position open.
Great. Thank you. All right, so then now we're on to my chair's report and goals. So as far as the executive committee, we met for a brief time before the last GRCSU meeting. Basically talked a little bit about the strategic plan, some board goals, that one of which is we'd like to have some SU events, 2 a year, potentially throughout the SU, to involve students, whether it's an art show or a science fair or a chorus get-together. Just try to bond our students throughout the SU and not just stay in Rutland Town, just kind of open up doors that way. And we also spoke briefly about pre-K, but I think we addressed that here tonight, that we're happy with how things are, and we'll kind of table that for now. And they also mentioned that they're also looking for after-school help down in Wells and Middletown Springs. They don't have Tapestry at those schools, so they're also having staffing issues and looking for people. And then the GRCSU minutes, I believe, were in the packet that you received. Did anyone have any questions on that? As far as the VSBA conference highlights, I did mean to ask you all to watch that 1-hour webinar. Did anyone get a chance to?
I did not.
No. Because when I was looking through it later in the week, I realized if you didn't RSVP to it, you don't have access to it. So it was unfair of me to ask you to watch something that you couldn't watch.
So if you email Sue Zaglowski, I'm sure that she would open up the link for any interested board members.
Yeah. So if you're interested, feel free to check that out. It was a good time. It was nice to talk to other superintendents and board members throughout the state. I really enjoyed they had a presentation of a student led production called Listen Up, which is a little bit more suited towards high school students, but it really talked about high schoolers' experience, and it's important to listen to them and be open-minded and hear what they have to say, and try to include them when you're making plans. And I think it's great that Sarah really advocated for the middle school students to attend the strategic plan, because it's the same thing. The students are here. It's important to hear what they have to say. So I was very happy to see them there. Moving on, we had discussed how the goals that we created in August that we wanted to revisit throughout the year to kind of just get a update on to how we're doing and just kind of reflect. So I had Christine include the goals that we had come up with, just to kind of go through them. So one thing that we had mentioned, and I had asked Sarah to kind of get us some information for this tonight, our first goal was to increase culture and connection as evidenced by behavior decreases. So I just wanted an update to see how our behavior numbers this year compared to last year, and what we're doing differently and what we're going to do differently.
Sure. So I apologize, this isn't in the board packet. Al Gregorievich and Eric had helped pull this together just so we can look at some of our behavior from what's been documented from last fall to this fall. Okay. So I think one thing that's clear, especially after the pandemic, the number of bullying and harassment we've seen a drastic increase coming off of the pandemic. And it's not just within Rutland Town School, I would say, but it's not just in Vermont schools, it's nationally, if you turn on the news. Between TikTok challenges to just, we heard from Ryan's story tonight from Mr. Halligan, the devices that are in these children's hands. And I think that's what Eric and I see the most of, is that all of this stuff happens outside of school, on the weekends, late into the evening, early hour mornings, that parents are not aware that's happening. And then those problems come into the school, and it's now the school's problem because it's impacting students' learning. So last year, I remember when Eric was hired, I said, we only have had like a couple hazing, harassment, and bullying investigations. We have a couple every year. It's very long, tedious, a lot of paperwork. Explosion last year. And really what I've seen is, again, parents not monitoring children's screen time whatsoever. It's scary. And some of the things that students are saying to one another are horrific. I think any parent that, and you can unhide messages, you can delete messages. So we've talked to a lot of parents that said, well, my child didn't do, and it's like, no, I'm looking at it, 3 a.m, they said this, and that. Well, no, they didn't. You can't prove that. So I mean, it's really impacted administration across the country. It's impacted teachers, and parents will say, it falls on the school. What's the school going to do about it? So we can teach our kids, we can model. We're blessed to have a full-time school resource officer to talk about those long-term effects, your digital footprint. We have a great, library media specialist, but I beg of parents to please look at your child's screen, monitor their devices. And I was very pleased tonight that Ryan's story, both Eric and I have heard him before when we were teachers. This is the 3rd time I've heard from him. When I left Mount Abe, every year after that, 6 years in a row, a student committed suicide, one of my students. So there's a lot that this school can do and has done, but I really hope that parents take a more active role in what their children are doing online. So you will see an increase in hazing, harassment, and bullying. And again, this is just the fall. We can show you more data, and as we go throughout the year, quarterly, what did it look like last year? So the first thing is recognizing we have a problem, right? So we have a problem, and what are we going to do about it? So one was that, our school counselor is going more into the classroom. One of the things that I'm passionate about is student voice and choice. As you said, Tina, this is your school. So we have Up for Learning that students are involved in. That was last year as well as this year. We have TA ambassadors, also student council, and a lot of that is from our guidance counselor. We want to get kids more involved in clubs, just more opportunities for not communicating online, but those face-to-face interactions, which has been helpful. Eric also started this year No Place for Hate, so he's had a couple of meetings with those groups of students. And really, it's when we have discipline issues, Eric and I have made a very strong effort. I want to bring parents in early on and bring them physically in to talk to me, meet with me, talk with their child. So we have a lot of work to do still. So the first page you'll see the behavior instances. Again, we're just looking for from September 1st to November 9th. And I did share with Tina prior to even pulling up this report, if there are any specific questions, I really just want to be careful. I don't want to talk about grades because it can identify a student. And if you have specific questions, I'm happy to discuss that in executive session. So one thing that we did look into is how often are we, quote, logging, so documenting these instances. So even though we see a huge increase from 2022 this fall for minor physical contacts, these are a small portion of students that may come into school, haven't been here before, that have some pretty strong behaviors. So when we get to constantly documenting these behaviors that are very disruptive to everybody's learning, we may then document somewhere else because they may need some more support, special education, behavior specialist, etc. So you can see behavior instances and how they're coded. And then the next page you can see by location. So Eric and I spoke today, the school bus. We have a couple new drivers and we have more kids on the bus, but it's how do we disaggregate this data? Behavior instances by day of week. Again, we're just looking for the first few months of school from last year to this year. So when I looked at Tuesday, I was thinking of 2 years ago when we had that half-day remote. So I was thinking, oh, that must be why, because that Tuesday was kind of students' Fridays, but that was 2 years ago. So there was a lot last year on Tuesdays this time of year. The rest is pretty consistent. And then if we go to the last page, this is behavior instance by hour. In years past, we see most behavior instances around lunch and recess time, those unstructured times. And then this 3 o'clock time is something that we're going to pay closer attention to, that, when we're logging those incidences, our question was, that's when we're logging them, are we forgetting to put the time the incident happened? Or are we just saying it's the end of the day, I got to get these incidents, kind of logged into the system? Or are they just happening right at the end of the day? So we're going to pay closer attention to that moving forward. A few things that, are not on here, but I think are good to just be aware of is that last fall, this time, we did have 2 HHBs that were brought forward by a student, and both of those were found. This year, we have had 4 parent-issued hazing, harassment, and bullying investigations. That's parents coming to us with information. Of those 4, 1 of them was found. So we're seeing more parents talk about bullying. There's a big investigation and process paperwork that goes through each one of those. And I think one of the things that Mr. Halligan said this evening is, we want to teach our kids to, be those upstanders, not a bystander, but we don't want parents to say every single thing is bullying, because I think that's a blanket word that's used often. And is it a kid just being mean, saying, I don't like your shoes? Or is it really that repeated, intimidating, ridicule, purposeful exclusion? Is it really bullying, or is it just mean? And Eric and I have talked to parents about that, because that term is used very loosely now. That something may happen, they say they're being bullied. And once they say that and have a complaint, then it opens up an investigation.
Thank you very much for this. I think it's great to gather this information, because I think it does get you to start thinking, a lot of it's happening on the bus, and we have a lot of new bus drivers. Maybe we need to, what can we do about that? Or, it looks like 3:00. Chaos ensues. Yeah.
Right.
So, why is it so high then? It does look like the lunchtime incidences went down a little bit compared to last year, which is good too. So I think I'm really glad you gathered this data, and I like that you're gathering together and discussing it and trying to figure out, what we can do to try to continue to improve. So in a few months, I'd love to see last year, and also compare to the first few months, compared to, what things you've implemented and how that's helped. And I think having programs like Ryan Halligan's story, and I know the guidance counselors and Tracy Sabaka and the Up for Learning and all those other things that you're putting into place, I can only imagine it can be helpful. So I think it's great that, we're really paying attention to this now. So thank you.
And I think with the strategic plan too, it was interesting. One of the first priorities that the students said was having having emotional support. They talked about testing anxiety. They said there's so many tests, and we have so much work, and pressures from parents and sports, and they talked about how having guidance counselors and family school coordinators is top priority. And all of them talked about how they've reached out to them, and that this has been really hard, especially the last couple of years, and shared a few personal stories. So I think that they recognize it too. And
that was one of the topics from that Listen Up production, about how, teenagers, from a parent standpoint, you don't realize how much teenagers are being asked to do between work and, maybe taking care of a sibling at home, or taking care of a pet, or, being home alone, and what that feels like, waiting for your parent to come home, or, whatever. There's a lot of things on their plate.
They could rule the world, though. They had it all figured out. They talked about, it was great. And their priorities are our priorities, which it just was, humbling. Like, we're all on the same page. So.
Nice job, you guys. Nice job. Thank you.
Any other comments from that?
No, thank you.
Thank you for pulling this together, and I look forward to seeing it in maybe January again. And then our second goal was evaluating the pre-K structure and deciding if it meets the needs of the community. I think after tonight, we've met that goal. I think that we've really done our job on that. So thank you to Angie and Sarah and Chris for gathering all the information for us. Number 3 was taking a proactive approach to building safety and maintenance, creating a 5-year plan. Kelly's left, but he's really doing a great job of keeping us up to date on inspections, and also being proactive in trying to plan financially how we can best serve the school and our community without, increasing taxes too much at one time. So I feel like we are working on that. And upstairs planning and usage, last month we decided that we were going to start kind of forming a committee, and Jeff and Billy had mentioned that you were going to help with that, and we'll start planning that in February after we have budget set of how we want to go about trying to get the community involved and how we're going to go forward. And then continuing increasing academic quality as evidenced by improvement in test scores and increased usage in MTSS. As far as test scores go, we've only had one set this year with MAP scores, and it's, I think, too early to tell. But I was curious if you could give us kind of an update on MTSS, how that's being used, how the teachers feel about it. And I know it's new and it's very different from previous ways of teaching.
Sure. Do you want to chat a little bit?
Sure.
Okay.
It's not really new. I mean, it's been around for a while. It's been around for a long time. And what we're asking teachers to do is a little bit different from what we've asked them to do before. And it is stressful. It's tough. But they're being asked to do a big lift. And the big lift is for the students. So the conversations I've had with teachers have been actually wonderful. They've been awesome. So we've talked about, what is homework, what's the importance of homework, talking about break times, brain break times. So all those discussions are coming out because it's best for kids. So MTSS covers a lot, but the conversations around that have been amazing. Change is hard, but I've seen a lot of teachers adapt quite well to some of the things that are being asked of them for universal interventions in class, reporting out to the EST team, kids they think that are in needs, and the EST team themselves. I'll throw out big congratulations to Lorraine and Becky, just doing an amazing job with that team, really keeping teachers informed, doing what's best for kids. It's a process, but it's the right process, and we're getting there. It's something that we are working towards, and we're getting there. I don't know if we'll ever meet perfection, but we're heading that direction. It's a well thought out district-wide initiative that we're pulling off. We're actually doing it at Rutland Town School. It's an important thing for kids, and it's all built around what is best for kids.
I just want to reiterate, this model has been in education for over 20 years. And I know that back in the late 90s in Illinois, we were using RTI, we were using a variety of forms. So it just took a while for Vermont to get on board with this. But I think from central office, I know that we'd asked the teachers and staff to do a lot this year, but it is part of our Act 173 implementation. But ideally, I think the more we go through this and tweak what we're doing, and we're going to find that we're going to be better identifying students who are in need of layer 2, layer 3 interventions and needs, which is ultimately what we're doing. And in turn, that will also see the continued improvement around teacher quality of instruction, and universal layer 1 instruction. So all students benefit from that.
Have the community, the parents, received information of how this differs from in the past, or is it so similar that there's no reason to just communicate that there's some differences? Because it sounds like it's very different from what we were doing. I was just curious.
We included go ahead.
We have sent out a couple newsletters from the district, and I might push back a little bit. It's a different, but it's not so far different. We're not like changing educational philosophies. It's just looking at how to best serve our students in a very mindful way with the supports needed to do so. And it's a shift, it's a change, but it's best practice also. So that's something we've been working for. Every teacher's been working for to work towards since they got hired. So this is just working towards those best practices.
So in your opinion, it's pretty similar to what we've done in the past, the way that we're helping with intervention with students? It's
It
a
is-
similar process.
It is different, and whatever change happens, it'll feel different. But it is using best practices to help kids.
So it's a change enough that it's stressful for the teachers.
I think all change is stressful.
Yeah. But not a big enough change. You said you did send out information to families so that they are aware that it's different.
Yeah, I don't, I'd have to go back, we sent something, I think, before conferences about intervention, so one of the biggest shifts is that, we used to, not have certain criteria in order for students to go receive intervention, and now it's a process, so teachers need to start, a universal intervention themselves, they need to collect data, have multiple points, maybe an interventionist will push into the classroom, and then, you continue with, more teaching before a student then is removed from the classroom to receive intervention. So that's the biggest change, which is what's stressful for teachers, because as teachers, we know our kids, and oftentimes we know, it may be the first day or the first week, this kid needs a push. If they can go to interventionists as in years past, I can then continue on with these kids, and the train's moving, kids can get caught up with interventionists and then scoop them back in. And now it's a process that you can't just send students to intervention. They have to meet certain test scores, assessments, and you have to show that you've tried X, Y, and Z.
So there might be less students in intervention right now, but that's because we're gathering data.
Correct.
And it's not that they're not getting extra help in the classroom.
Correct.
So that might be perceived differently. It's not that they're not getting that extra help, they're just getting it through the classroom teacher, or maybe the interventionist pushing into the classroom and doing it. So it's just a different model.
It's a different model.
And we're 2 months into the school year, so we got to catch up to things and see what happens in 3, 4, 5, 6 months. I think it
So-
might look a little bit different at that time.
So now that we're using MTSS, will there still be that lag next fall? Or will we still use the data from the spring so that when they come into the fall, we're not starting over again?
I don't know what's going to happen next fall. I think that's the thing. We're doing these things for the first time, so we're running into little hurdles that we'll report back to the MTSS committee and say, for just as a simple example, we created a plan for a student and it's only allowing us to put one category, so they may need reading and math support. So I mean, it's just little things like that to say, ooh, do we have to create a whole separate plan, or how do we add into the current plan? So I'm not sure what would be the next step for next year. I would think it would be similar, that we would need to first collect data and work with those kids
Even though that you have the data from where they were in June?
in the spring, because I think we need to see where they come in the fall, what they look like in the fall.
You would have, just having used this model in other states for many, many years, you would have the spring data, but you'd also have the fall data. Just kind of, so you'd have two pieces of, so you'd have data that you'd be using day one, and then we look at fall data to support that. I think where the second year will be not as troublesome as the first year. First year, like I said, there was a lot. It was like Sarah said, went from an anecdotal, reference to tier, or referral to tier 2 or layer 2, now to really being data driven. And I think we saw that across the SU, we had a high number of students who were receiving tier 2 interventions that really, it was not necessary. It should be back into the classroom, and the classroom teacher should be working with those individuals, and then to kind of, so the individuals that really work on tier 2 are those that need it. And I think that's what this process is.
So it's just, it's
doing.
different, it's just a shift, it sounds like.
Correct. And there are some who, like I said, there are many who, as Sarah said, it's more data-based. You have to show that before a referral comes in. And like I said, having done this for the past 15, 20 years, before I made a referral as a classroom teacher back in Illinois or back in New Jersey, I had to document all the things that I did, all the intervention steps, everything else. So I couldn't just sit there and say, hey, this kid needs intervention. There was a process to this. And there were steps that I would take as a classroom teacher, and I'd work with interventionist or things I could do around universal or, layer 1 or tier 1. So that's really what this model is doing, is so that when students are, moved to a tier 2 or a layer 2, that there's the data that supports that, what that looks like, but also they're not in there forever. So there's data that supports them coming in, but there's also data that supports them moving off of tier 2 as well. It's not just they're in there for the duration of the year, or else it could just be a short term. That's why there's this, the team meets regularly to take a look at this data.
So as we're waiting for the data, we don't have as many students in intervention currently, so those interventionists are going into the classroom and doing the universal. Is that how it's working?
And in the beginning, they were doing also a lot of training around this process as well as our new assessments. So they've been instrumental in getting this up and running.
Great. Be interesting to hear how it's going at our February.
And this model is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's probably back to 173. It's just that we're going to continue to look at how do we refine it and, make it work for us. So, we meet regularly to discuss that. And I think at the end of the year, we'll meet again and we'll, have, classroom teachers who will be giving us feedback and we'll look through, but we're not, I know there have been some staff saying, can we just get rid of it? It's like, no, we can't. It's part of a piece of legislation. It's here. And as Eric said, it is part of best practice, and ultimately our students will benefit from this. So.
And maybe once they're in it and see how it's actually working, it'll.
There were a lot for the teachers around FastBridge. There was a steep learning curve, a lot of extra work. So it's like I completely understand where the headaches were and some of the animosity toward this. It's just there's a lot that was placed on the plates of our teachers, and we're grateful for that. But that's why I said I think as we move forward with this, they'll understand. But I also, from what I heard, the FastBridge has a lot of intervention steps, things that they can, it's right there for them. It's very user friendly. So.
What is FastBridge, the MTSS system, or what is that?
So it's an assessment tool that also helps. It's like a bank of interventions that you can use depending on what a student may need. It's a wealth of resource. I went down a rabbit hole for I don't even know how long. So there's just a lot there. So they have canned things that you can do, or they can say, here, this is the skill that this student needs. Here are some ideas, so you can put your own spin on it. I think just like all teachers, it's difficult if you have 25 kids in a class and you have a third of them that are identified. It's how do I provide that instruction, especially with little kids, while getting them to do independent work and still learning, while I can then provide that intervention to those kids, that's why it's helped having some of those interventionists push in so they can help with groups. But it's just a lot of new things this year. EduClimber, FastBridge, MTSS. Right, special educators started with EdPlan, and then it changed to DocuSped.
Thank you. So maybe February we'll do another update similar.
So thank your classroom teachers.
Yes.
They got a lot on their plates.
Yeah.
And I know that part of your goal, the shift to Cognia, we're waiting to hear more about that. I do know that the SBACs still are embargoed, so I know we talked about potentially discussing that in December. But we may not be able to discuss that in December, so I'm not certain why things are still embargoed, but they are. So.
Okay.
But when the state told us we were going to have SBAC, they said you'll have the results immediately. Remember that?
Yeah, every state promise.
Right, every state says that, so, yeah. So we're fortunate that we have our own assessment data and classroom data to look at, because we don't rely on that SBAC coming quickly.
Anyone have any other comments on the goals? Thank you so much. Next up, the policy. I added D4 volunteers and work study students because we were noticing that, or we've heard that some volunteers have felt that it's been hard to become volunteers, and we wanted to make sure that this policy kept our school safe and also made sure it was accessible so that parents and community members could feel welcome at the school to help out. So some things that we were discussing, when reading this policy, it doesn't differentiate between a volunteer that's supervised versus a volunteer that is unsupervised super well. And whether or not the board felt that it was worth having a different mechanism for a background check for someone that is in for a 4-winds lesson versus someone that is coaching an after-school team without any teachers around, kind of thing. I'll give you a minute to kind of read through it.
So Tina, you're asking the board if they would like to send this back to the committee
Just to kind of look at it again and maybe have that
with some language
differentiated.
around a supervised volunteer,
Mhm.
supervised volunteer, and what that background check would consist of.
Mhm. If the board thought that that would be worthwhile.
Just for discussion, I do know other SUs, when parents enter buildings, I'm not suggesting this, but just, we're talking about background checks, they have ID scanners, and so the ID scanner will quickly run a quick background check around, like, sexual offender registry and things along those lines. So you're suggesting that potentially like a supervised volunteer, let's say going on a field trip, that there'd be that quick background check to make sure, something on those lines, like a school would on that.
Ideally, that would be awesome. However, the way it's working right now, we don't have that, and
No, that's what I'm asking,
yeah.
that's what you did.
And the
committee
background,
considers, something
the
like that.
background check we checked into takes 24 to 48 hours or something like that. Did you say?
Right, and then the
For that one?
fingerprints, depending, they can take a couple of weeks, but I have a parent that I know is chaperoning Washington DC with me, so I said, just, have you gotten, she's like, no, it's been 6 weeks. So I think, we want to get more parent volunteers into the building, and I will be the first to admit, I probably don't follow this to a T. If I have a parent that's coming in as a mystery reader to their kindergarten classroom, for example, and if I just need some more direction on the board. Should they have fingerprint and a background check done if they're coming in as a mystery reader? So to say, before you are around any of these kids, you need to have fingerprint and background check. Before they do the book fair, if the PTO book fair is happening in the school during school hours, should they all have fingerprint and background checks done? I know in years past, but it's not the way it was written. It was if you are left alone with students or chaperoning a trip. So if you're going to Washington, D.C., if you're chaperoning a field trip, chaperoning 8th grade dance, you need to have, just an example, you need to have fingerprint and background check done. But the way this policy and the procedure that's written, it basically says any volunteer. So should it be what is a visitor versus what is a volunteer? It's just, and that's the feedback I've received from parents. And when I've asked about, would you want to come? They're like, the fingerprint and background check, I did it 3 years and I couldn't find a parking space in downtown. I'm like, forget it, and then I got to wait to get reimbursed. It's such a hassle. So I just feel in the handful of probably a dozen parents I've spoke with, it's not welcoming them in, but of course we want those adults around our children to be safe.
And the way this is written, it doesn't say that everyone has to have fingerprints.
It says it in the procedure, though.
That's the criminal background check, is they're all fingerprinted.
It's not. Oh, you're not talking about the background, the other screening one that you were talking about with the license.
Right, so we would just have a
background check.
well,
So remove
right,
the word criminal.
Right, so that's something I think that would be discussed in
Yeah.
policy committee about what. I think where Sarah had said, at the end of the day, we want to make sure that any individual, whether it be supervised or unsupervised, that we can say with certainty that they are not going to pose any sort of threat or danger to any of our kids. That's ultimately is whether it be they're visiting for 5 minutes or they're going on like chaperone a Washington D.C. trip. I think that's, and that's the peace of mind. I think that's what we want to make sure of. That we, I understand families and the frustration. I know that families have come to this central office and berated Christine and Debbie around the process, and been very unprofessional because they're frustrated. But at the same time, is they have to understand it's at the end of the day, we're just trying to make sure that that all of our students are safe, and that's really what it is. So I think that's where.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you'd have 10 times the parents coming in if something did happen to a student, right? Like, if you let someone in without a background
I always say
check.
I'd rather one parent be upset with me because they have to be proactive in this, as opposed to,
Mom.
Yeah.
right. And so,
You don't want that on your shoulders, for sure.
No, what were you saying? The ID scan takes
Yeah.
24 to 48 hours?
no, so the ID scan, and this is
No,
just,
the way our system works now for that. What?
so, no, what I was saying, is, so I know that Fairhaven currently has, when you walk into one of their, or I should say Slate Valley, one of the facilities, they will have an ID scanner. And so you just basically have your government-issued ID, and they quickly scan it, and then it just runs around, just like, a quick background check, particularly around sexual offender registry. It's not as comprehensive or thorough, but it ticks the boxes just to make sure that you're not appearing on, there's not a warrant out for your arrest or along those lines. Like I said, the criminal background check that I've seen, the reports are very thorough. They go all the way back, and so, but I think that's where I think the discussion would be around if there would be a shift, it would be something
a
similar to that.
supervised.
Right. And I know that there was a discussion once about whether or not we have ID scanners for that particular purpose in our schools. So if there is someone who came in to work with students, would we just have them do an ID scan as part of that, or a field trip? I said that's something which I think the boards would have to discuss and consider. So
I remember that conversation early on when I started on the policy committee, and I was kind of like, well, if that technology is out there, we need to have it, so.
yeah, I mean, right. I think it's, but from a school culture standpoint, I think it's one where, I think, and that's just, there's that balance. I mean, I think that's where Slate Valley, and I say this, considering the events that occurred, I think 5-6 years ago, I think the community was in support of this because they felt, hey, this is going to keep us safe because of the threat that was
Well,
there. I think,
everybody, and I can say this for firsthand, is that everybody is having this problem with, security and safety. It's one of your first priorities, and we're having that problem in the church right now. We're with all the churches are having the same problem with security. And it's like a lot of them, we want to be open and welcome. Well, you also want to be safe. So there's a line there where you got to take a stand and do what's right and what's right for everybody. So
yeah. And I know it's been suggested that that the central office have like background events where on 3 times a year we'll have someone come in and do.
Yeah.
But that's great. But you're still going to have, you might get more proactive, but you're still going to have an individual who doesn't attend but then last minute wants to be a part of it and is going to. It's still not going to catch everyone.
Right.
Someone's still, it's not going to be foolproof. It'll be just another event that we host that might eliminate some of the problem, but there still will be some.
And then I just would like more clarity around what is it a visitor, if they were left alone, if there were their teachers, and then, my mind goes to, okay, if I have a PTO event at the school, do I oversee to make sure, do I need to know that everybody that may be around kids at that event, even though it's not school, do they need to make sure they go through fingerprint and background check? I mean,
that may be a whole nother policy.
Right. I mean, I'm not trying, I think the procedure is.
I don't think you do because it's not a school function. I think it goes to the community use facility policy.
But if it's during the day when they're coming, like the book fair is an example,
The book
that's
fair
what,
would be different.
when I look at the procedure, and again, I have not followed this to a T, I'll be the first to admit it, because I think of times I'm like, ooh, does that guest speaker or guest reader, have they passed a fingerprint and background check? So maybe it's me. I would just like more clarity around so I can tell Pam and Sherry when they enter the office, they need to make sure
But
they're
a guest
on this
reader
list.
could be considered a visitor too.
Right, that's how
I think, right, but I think when you look at book
they
fair
voluntary?
or like a guest speaker, that doesn't really meet the criteria. Like it says, who works on an occasional or regular basis in the school setting to assist the staff. like a guest speaker's not here to assist the staff, they're
Right.
there to speak, or the book fair. So I think, you know, I think right now we have a policy in place that all volunteers should be going through
Right.
the process.
And it says
we should not
volunteers
be
and work study.
making decision. I think that if there's a decision to be made, I think it's one that has come through the policy in terms of whether or not we want to shift, and then if we want to shift, then we can develop a procedure that reflects that. But my concern is, like I said, I just, you know, when my daughter goes to her school, I just want to make sure that the school hasn't just cut corners just out of convenience, and all of a sudden that someone has, you know, kind of, you know, gotten through the cracks and all of a sudden caused a situation. I think that's a hard thing to explain to someone that, you know, that we, and I'm not saying like, you know, an ID does not, you know, an ID scan does not catch all these things, but but I said, I think that's something which is warrants a discussion in terms of what that looks like, so.
Yeah. So, do I have a motion to send this policy back to the policy committee to kind of discuss some of our thoughts?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Billy. So we're gonna send D4 back and discuss, volunteer versus, visitor, supervised versus unsupervised, and what are some ways to make our schools safer without decreasing access to volunteers. Perfect.
Do they use that scanner for applicants? Like interview process?
That may save us a lot of time.
That could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we have a few second read policies. We have E7, policy on non-discriminatory mascots and school branding. Need a motion?
We go one by one on these?
On the second reads, yeah. Any discussion? We don't have a motion yet.
I'll make a motion to send these through. Second read.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Jeff. And then we have the selection of instructional materials, G5. I also need a motion on that or some discussion.
I'll make a motion to approve G5.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Billy. And then we have 4 first read policies. F2 is search and seizure of students by school personnel. I had some comments on that one. I didn't have the printout before, so sorry, you have to read my notes. I said that I thought we should change he or she to they, which is on the second paragraph, searches of school property, where it says the reliability of information he or she has received. I know the policy committee's been working to switch from he or she to more neutral pronouns, so I thought we should probably do that as well. There is something I proposed. And then I thought that that we should remove the searches of school property because it's repetitive and not accurate to the paragraph underneath. So, the searches of school property says a lot of the same things that searches and seizure of school property is. And then the search and seizure of student and student property kind of covered everything else that was up there. So I just thought there was a lot of repetition in this. So I was thinking that the policy committee could kind of relook at that. I don't know how the board feels. Any more discussion on that? were you happy with how it was, or? I just thought that there was just a little bit more repetition on it than needed to be.
Where did you say, what did you want to remove?
I think that the searches of school property,
That whole,
that whole section, even though I already corrected it today, just in case they keep it when it goes back to policy, was repeated under the searches and seizure of school property and was covered enough in the search and seizure of student property. I wasn't sure it needed all of it. I didn't want to tell them how to fix it. I just think it had a lot of repetition, that it could be shorter, basically. And it looked like they had, they had some repetition with the copies, so they crossed out that in the red line. But I thought that there was even more that they could be downsized a little bit.
is it searches and seizure, is it on school property or of school property? That changes it a lot.
It says of school property. They both say of.
Well, one was talking about school property and the other was talking about student property.
Right, but
Well,
these
no, I
are
mean on the first page, so like.
first page. They're both
It's
of.
if it's meant to say searches and seizures on school property, then it makes more sense because it's talking about
So that might
materials
be,
and
maybe
things.
that's why it was repetitive. So maybe that of was supposed to be an on.
Of school property would be like the lockers or stuff like that, wouldn't it?
Well, that's mentioned.
Well, it says supplies loaned by, I guess, yeah.
I mean, the searches of school property says it retains the right to examine its property at any time. And it says the same thing down here, maybe, all those things it mentioned may be open and inspected by school employees at any time. It's like repeats itself. And I just thought it just looked kind of sloppy that way. I just think it could be cleaned up a little bit and just kind of smushed together. I don't know. Because the student property one was all together. Search and seizure of student and student property. I just thought the searches of school property and the searches and seizure of school property could be smushed together too and just make it cleaner.
Like pare them down together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they say mostly the same thing, but
Tina, the model policy of the Vermont School Board Association it has just, has done that. So if we can just share the model policy with the committee, they can maybe take a look at that.
okay.
So
Sounds good.
it has clarified that.
I didn't look at the model policy.
No,
I
no,
thought
I
this
just
was
read-
based on it, yeah.
All right, I just
Yeah.
checking that, so.
Thank you. So, would you guys, you have a meeting this week, right?
Wednesday.
Okay.
This one going back, did you? This one going back?
Is that okay?
That was the first.
Do you
reading.
agree? Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
fine.
we're
If
supposed
the
to-
model
Yeah.
policy
Yeah.
looks better, then I'm not gonna object.
Yeah,
to
so,
that.
so look at the model policy is what you're gonna tell them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then on F21,
Will you send this information to Eric?
well,
Okay. I'm
but
taking notes.
he's
Okay.
taking notes,
too.
yeah.
Did you see the email last week from
Yeah.
Eric?
Yep.
So you're gonna do that, so I don't need to, okay. So F21 is admission of resident students. Does anyone have any comments on that one? And then there's G4, the selection of library materials. So I had a couple things. On the first line where it says the school library plays an important role, it should be an, not and.
No D?
No D. The second line should be student to students. The important role in helping students to inquire, to study.
S?
An S, add the S onto students. The third line, understandings to understanding, to gain new understanding and knowledge.
You just move that S up?
Yep, you could do that. The second paragraph, there should be no comma after collection, because it's all part of the same word sentence. This policy exists to ensure that the district provides access to a diverse library collection that supports students in the curriculum, their personal research, and recreational reading, and that sustains students' First Amendment rights to access information and to read freely. So I don't think it needs a comma there. And change that sustains, I think that was fine. Okay. Anyone else have any comments on that one? And the last one is advertising H3 in schools, public solicitations and student fundraising. Anyone have any comments on that one? Okay, good to go. Teacher social, December 6th at 5:30. Does that work for everyone? Just the board, not the administration.
Number 6.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
What time?
5:30 to 6:30-ish at the school. That was the date that Marcia Turner gave me that the teachers had
I
picked.
can do that.
Does that work?
Yep.
Did you, I think we're just doing some hors d'oeuvres or something. Does anyone have any suggestions?
What's that?
Hors d'oeuvres or something? Anybody have any thoughts about that? I'm gonna set it up with Marcia and we'll be splitting the cost.
Was Marcia going to work on that with you, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Does anyone have any suggestions or opinions as to what we do for the
No.
food?
Pretty easy.
Yeah. Nothing sticky.
Nothing sticky.
Sticky buns?
Wings.
Nothing
Yeah.
crazy here.
Oh, I won't be there.
All right. Our next meeting is December 12th at 6 p.m. in the library. Good and welfare.
I got one. Back when the school hosted the rec Halloween function out back, the middle school kids were the ones running the games and stuff out there. And this is the first time my grandson has ventured over to the school. And he had the most fun. And the kids, my daughter's a high school teacher, my son-in-law's a lower grade teacher, and they just commented on how well the kids were with the little ones. It was, they had so much fun, and that was, contributing to Mr. Rose, organization, and the kids being so pleasant and wonderful with all of the kids. But my grandson, his first experience over here was wonderful, and I thank them.
Oh, thank you.
That was awesome.
Oh, I wanted to share, I thought parent-teacher conferences were awesome, and I know our teachers put in a lot of long hours, and I'm so appreciative of them. Also very appreciative of Ryan's story tonight. It was just, really impactful. I got a lot more out of that than I thought I would. So pretty thankful for that for our community and our kids.
That's great. I do have something to share, but I do have a question on it. Will there be, I'm sure things are going to come about after Ryan's story. So is there any proactive approaches that we're taking in the school to sort of engage that conversation, or is it?
Yeah, so there were some guiding questions for discussions for students. There were some students that were identified to have some follow-up with our counselors. And then I spoke to Tracy Sabaka just before the presentation about another idea of just to make sure all of our kids are checked in on. So.
That's great. I mean, I asked Sophie if it was focused both on, not only not being positive and not, bullying in nature, but also able to speak to concerns that you have and things like that. So that's great that you guys are.
So she talked to you about it, or did you have to ask?
We talked about it a little bit.
Okay.
So, and just trying to balance that with younger ears.
Yeah.
Which is what we had to navigate as a family. But and then I just want to share. So I just spent the weekend down in Delaware for a family wedding, which was great. Great to get home, but it really put in perspective for me, having talked to people that have kids my age and things like that, and kids younger than our family and things. But I think we kind of take for granted how good we really have it. I mean, we seek out opportunities and threats and things like that, and we kind of have to dig for that, because a friend of mine at home, he's taking a year off because he's got like a 6th grader, a kindergartner, and pre-K at 3 different schools that don't bus, period. So we're having conversations about busing for sports where these schools aren't busing at all, so we have a real resource here that we kind of take for granted just because it's right here, so that's just kind of an eye-opener for me, to say, kudos to the community and all the support they give us and all that we really have. That's it. That's my good and farewell piece.
I'm thankful that the PTO is getting back up and running again, and not only do they, provide for the school with furniture and books and things like that, but they also help sponsor different assemblies and things like that. And it does take a lot of work. And also social events, they're fun events for Rutland Town families to attend, and it's nice to have that. So, thank you. All right. I think we do need an executive session.
Very brief.
Okay. So thank you all. We're going to take a small break until.
Yes, I gotta use the bathroom.
Please help yourself to cookies.
Okay.
There's
And
plenty over there.
7:45 we'll restart the executive session.